What's up guys? Today I'm going to be sharing my absolute favorite drugstore dupes for high-end makeup from 2022. These are the best of the best that I found that are truly indistinguishable from the higher end products and in total are about $1,000 less than the high-end brands. So let's go ahead and jump right in and get started. All right, so the first set of dupes I'm going to talk about is from a video that I did back on January 12th, and it was called Dupes for My Most Expensive Makeup. I think I'm actually even wearing this sweater in that video, funny enough. And the whole premise of this video was that I took the most expensive item from each category in my makeup collection, like my most expensive primer, most expensive foundation, and looked through and found a dupe within my own collection. So the first dupe I want to share is the Tom Ford foundation stick. This retails for $89, and I found that my Wet n Wild Photo Focus foundation stick, which is $6, is pretty much the identical texture, finish, the whole experience of using the Wet n Wild foundation stick is exactly the same as the Tom Ford. And I was blown away because that Tom Ford foundation stick is almost $100, and the only reason that I spent that much money on it is because it had good reviews. It said that, the reviews were saying that it was good for dry skin, which I have. So I just figured for that amount of money, it must be amazing. But then look at how good the Wet n Wild one was. It just blew me away for $6. So that one was a really awesome dupe. The next dupe that I had was for the Hourglass Vanish blush sticks. These are $46. So definitely the most expensive blush sticks in my collection. And I remember going through all of my blush sticks and thinking none of these really have the same texture and finish. And then it hit me that I could use the Milani Color Fetish matte lipsticks as a dupe for these because they literally have the same texture. Even though they're a lipstick, they're super dry, which is why I really wasn't a fan of actually wearing them on my lips. But I thought as a cream blush, they're probably perfect. And so I put them side by side with the Hourglass ones, and I put one on one cheek, one on the other, and I was blown away by just how similar the experience was. And even the colors of the Milani lipsticks that I had matched up to the ones that I had in the Hourglass blushes. So it really was an amazing kind of out of the box dupe, but it really ended up working out, and I could not tell the difference at all when I wore these. I felt like they had the same longevity. It was such a good one. The next product I had was my most expensive powder blush, and that was the Charlotte Tilbury blush in the shade Pillow Talk. So that one cost $40, and I found that the Milani baked blush in the shade Berry Amore, which is $9, was pretty much identical in terms of the color, the finish. It has a little bit of a glow to it, not a lot of sparkle or glitter, just that little hint of glow that the Charlotte Tilbury one also has. And I actually like the formula of the Milani baked blushes even more, especially on my drier, more mature skin, because the baked blushes are just so seamless and they just kind of glide over your skin and they don't have that powdery effect. So I loved that dupe. And then the last dupe from this video that I wanted to talk about is the Huda Beauty Precision Liquid Liner, which is $19. That was my most expensive eyeliner at the time. And my dupe for that was from LA Girl. It's the Jet Setter Liquid Liner, which is $7. And this liquid liner, I would just use interchangeably with the Huda one. Sometimes I would grab the LA Girl, sometimes I would grab the Huda. I really couldn't tell a difference between them at all. They both have a very similar brush tip, and both of them are very gentle jet black and they don't skip or tug on your lash line. So I just felt like the LA Girl one was so similar, and it also had the same lasting power on me as well. So moving on, the next video I wanted to talk about actually isn't a dupe video. It was an underrated makeup video that I did back on February 2nd. And this was one of my favorite dupes of the whole year, actually. I had found that the Wet n Wild blush stick in the shade Peach Bums, which is $4, was pretty much almost the spot-on dupe for the Charlotte Tilbury Pinkgasm Glow Wand, which is $40. So when I put them on my skin, even though one is a liquid and one is a cream blush in a stick, once they're blended out on your cheeks, I honestly cannot tell the difference between them at all. They both are almost the same color. They have the same amount of glowiness. And this was a dupe that really took off. I ended up seeing it all over TikTok and everybody was sharing it. It was just such a fun dupe because that Wet n Wild blush stick has been out on the market for years. It probably sits on the drugstore shelves and nobody looks at it or touches it, but then all of a sudden you realize it's a dupe and then people are buying it like crazy. So that one was really fun. The next video that I did was on March 13th, and this was just another dupes for high-end makeup video that I had done, but there's a few dupes in here that really stood out to me. The first one is for the Item Beauty Blush and Like blushes. These are a really fun kind of texture. They look and feel like a powder, but they're actually a cream. They're sort of like a cream powder hybrid. They're really an interesting texture, but they cost $16, and I had found that the J-Cat Marshmallow blushes are identical to these, both in the texture and the color that I happened to find in the J-Cat. I was able to completely replicate the Item Beauty blush. And in all honesty, these feel completely the same when you touch the product. There's no difference other than the packaging and the name that's on the product itself. It's really amazing. Another dupe that I had found in this video was for the NARS Air Matte blushes, and I found that the Morphe Wonder Tint Lip and Cheek Mousse in the shade FYP, which is $12, was almost identical to the NARS Air Matte blush in the shade Freedom, which is $30. They have that same fluffy whipped texture. I felt like the color was very similar, and I'm not normally a huge fan of Morphe, but this is one of their products that I really, really enjoyed, and I felt like it was such a similar product to the NARS at a much more affordable price. So I love that one. Another blush dupe that I had found in that video, I feel like it was very blush heavy, is the for the Rose Ink blush in the shade Foxglove, which is $30. And the dupe that I found was from Undone Beauty, and it was their cream blush in the shade Rosewood, which is $12. And again, I felt like in the pan, these looked a little bit different, but then once I swatched them out, and especially after they're blended, they look really identical. And they do also have the same sort of texture. They feel a little bit more greasy, a little more emollient at first, but then they dry down, I would say most of the way, if not all the way. And they really give the same look and feel and experience as you're using it, and also the same finished look. So I thought this one was another really good one. The next one is also a blush dupe, and this was for the Dior Rosy Glow blush. I know this one kind of hit peak popularity this year. Everybody was talking about it and then trying to find dupes because it was sold out. And it's also really expensive. It's $39. So the dupe that I had found in this video is not a drugstore product, but it's still a lot less expensive than the Dior. And that was the new Persona Bubble Blush that had just come out very recently. That one's $22, so it's still better than $39. And I also have a coupon code for 10% off Persona, so I'll leave that down in the description box in case you do want to check it out. But the Persona blush is just that exact same cool tone pink shade that the Dior is, where it's almost like a hot pink, but it comes off on your skin very soft and very wearable. And I really could not tell the difference between these two at all when I put them on my cheeks. They really looked identical. And then the last dupe I had from this particular video was the Merit Signature Lipstick, which is $26. I had just gotten those in PR at the time, and I really loved just how hydrating they are. They feel very weightless on your lips, and they also gave a very smoothing effect, so they just don't look dry or enhance your lip lines. And the lipstick that I felt in my collection was so similar is the Flower Beauty Perfect Pout lipsticks, and I had a couple of different shades that I compared with the Merit ones in that video, but the Flower Beauty lipsticks are $9, and I honestly can't tell the difference. I almost feel like the Flower Beauty ones are maybe even just a little bit more hydrating than the Merit ones. They're just that same very hydrating and very weightless feel for a lipstick. So I love those. Moving on April 3rd, I did another dupes for high-end makeup video, and I think in the thumbnail it said like save your money or something like that. And in that one, I talked about a dupe for the Huda Beauty Cheeky Tint Blush Sticks, which had just come out at the time, and they were $25 each. And they reminded me so much of my blush sticks from Palladio. I never know how to say that one. And those are $8.99, but they really come in such similar packaging. Again, I felt like I had similar colors already in my collection. I think I got those on Amazon, but I believe that brand is also sold at Sally Beauty as well. So they're definitely worth checking out. And I felt like they were just so similar to the Huda Beauty ones, both in terms of how they applied and the finish. They dry right down to a powder finish, and they don't leave a sticky, tacky feel on your cheeks. They're really lightweight, very blendable. So I felt like these were incredibly similar. The next one that I had was a dupe for the Makeup by Mario Soft Pop Blush Stick in the shade Pale Petal, and this is $28. And I was so shocked when I found this dupe. It was the Flower Beauty Gel Crush Blush in the shade Raspberry, which is $10. And the Flower Beauty one obviously had been out before the Mario, and they don't look anything alike in terms of the packaging, but I was just going through all my blushes and kind of swatching them next to the Mario one. And when I had swatched the Flower Beauty, I was like, wow, this formula feels the same. The color is really similar. And then of course I put them on my cheeks to try them out actually on my face, because that's what I always do with dupes, to make sure that they not only swatch the same, but they apply the same. And I was really blown away by how they both have this sort of almost gel-like texture, and it's like a sheer tint that you can build up. I really felt like they were so super similar. And then the third dupe that I had from this video was a dupe for my absolute favorite big fluffy powder brush, which I use for bronzer, from Refer, and it's their number 25 brush that's $130, which is so expensive for a brush. I know that it is natural hair, but the reason that I like it, and it was sent to me in PR, by the way, I did not buy that, but the reason that I loved that brush is just because of how big and fluffy it was, and I felt like it just gave such a beautiful, even bronzer application. And then I found this other one from Sigma, which is their Luxe powder brush, and this one is still not drugstore priced, but it's $36, so it's a lot less expensive than the Refer one. And it basically, even though it's not a natural hair brush, it's synthetic, it's just as soft, it blends bronzer just as well as the Refer one. I really felt like there wasn't a big difference between them. And I actually reached for the Sigma one a little bit more, because sometimes I feel like the natural hair in the Refer brushes can at times feel a little bit prickly on my skin, depending on how the bristles hit my face. And I just feel like the Sigma one is just so soft. It's a little bit more rounded. So I really enjoy the Sigma one so much. Next, on May 15th, I had done a video called These Dupes Are Even Better. So these were dupes that I had found previously, but then I found dupes that I liked even better. So the first one was for the Tower 28 Beach Please Cream Blush. That's $20. I think before, in a previous dupes video, I had compared it to one of the Milani cream blushes, and I felt like the color was the same, but the texture was a little bit off. Then I found the Moira Love Heat cream blushes, which are $8.50, and these are like a literal exact dupe for the Tower 28. Both the packaging, the texture, the colors that they come in. I just felt like these are probably an intentional dupe. It seemed like Moira was really trying to copy Tower 28 with these, but these feel exactly the same when you pick them up. They apply the same way, they wear just as long. I really love having pretty much the exact same product for less than half the cost. So this was definitely an awesome find. And then also in this video, I found a dupe for the Clinique Black Honey that I liked even better than the other dupes that I had found previously. And that was the CoverGirl lip balm in the shade Bliss You Berry. That's $6.99. So the Clinique Black Honey is $20. And I just thought that this color was so spot on. I think originally I had duped it with one of the e.l.f. Sheer Slick lipsticks, and that one was close. I think it really was a pretty good dupe, but this one is like spot on. It really has that sort of blackened berry color, and I love how soft and weightless it feels on your lips too. It's a really, really good dupe. And then the third dupe that I chose from that video was a dupe that I found for the Givenchy Rose Perfecto Lip Balm in the shade 210. Those cost $37, and the dupe that I found is the L'Oreal Balm in Gloss in the shade Feathery Fleur. So those are $11. And I think previously the dupe that I had found was a gloss from Beauty Pie that was really similar, but the L'Oreal one is even closer to the Givenchy in terms of both the color, the feel, and even the scent. Both of these have a rose kind of floral scent to them, which honestly is not my favorite. But if you want the Givenchy one, especially for the rose scent or that really soft, cushiony texture that that lip balm has, the L'Oreal one is literally spot on. I can't tell the difference when I'm wearing either one. And then the next video was from May 22nd, and I had just titled that one, I Found More Dupes. And by the way, I'll link all of these videos at the end of this one in a playlist because there are many more dupes within each video that I didn't mention here. So just in case you want to watch them later. But anyway, the first dupe that I found in this one, I found some dupes for the NARS blushes in the shades Dolce Vita and Impassioned. These are $32 a piece, and I found that the Revlon blushes, the newer ones in the new packaging, in the shades Apricot and Rosy Rendezvous, are pretty much spot on identical to the NARS blushes. These are $11.99, and I felt like the colors were similar, the texture, how they apply. They're very, very pigmented, just like the NARS blushes. They blend the same and have the same lasting power. They are so incredibly close. I was just blown away by these. And the next dupe that I found in that video was for the Milk Makeup Pore Eclipse Primer, which I think had just come out recently. And that was $36. And the one that I felt like was just almost identical is the Wet n Wild Impossible Primer, which is $7. Both of these go on feeling like a silicone primer, but both are silicone free. Whatever they're using is kind of like a silicone alternative. And both of them had this sort of cooling sensation and almost like a jelly-like texture that leaves your skin looking and feeling very smooth. So I could not tell the difference between these at all. And then later on down the line, Huda Beauty had also come out with her Blur Jam primer from, I think it was from her Glowish range. And that one is also pretty much identical to the Wet n Wild Impossible primer, just in case you were wondering about that one. They're both kind of the same concept with no silicone in the formula, and they have very similar claims. Moving on June 10th, I did a video called Dupes for High-End Makeup Summer Edition, and I had a couple of favorites from this video as well. The first one was for the Laura Mercier Baked Radiance Powder in the shade 1. This is $45, so it's a more expensive highlighter, but it's so beautiful. It just gives the most gorgeous glow on your cheeks, and it's a baked formula, so it's very smooth. And the dupe that I found for this was actually my JCat Beauty Baked Bronzer in the shade Coconut Island. So even though this is technically a bronzer, the lightest shade is really more like a highlight. It's very light, and it's $8.99, so it's a steal compared to the Laura Mercier. And I thought that these had the same exact texture. They're both baked, and they have a very similar color, really similar finish on the skin. I was blown away, and I feel like a lot of people wouldn't think of using a bronzer in place of a highlight, but this particular shade is definitely way too light to use as a bronzer, so it was perfect. I had also found a dupe for my Chanel Rouge Coco Flash Lipstick, and that was in the shade Moment. It's $42, so definitely not inexpensive. And the dupe that I found was the Revlon Glass Shine Lipstick, and this was in the shade Glazed Mauve. It's $6, and I don't think I really was comparing the shades as much as I was the actual formula. I do feel like the packaging on both looks really similar, but mainly the formula of these two is identical. They have this really like soft, melty kind of lip balm texture, tons of shine. And I actually like the Revlon one more in terms of the scent. It has a vanilla scent, and I think the Chanel one had more of a floral scent, if I remember correctly. So those Revlon Glass Shine lipsticks are amazing, and I honestly couldn't tell the difference between that and Chanel. So that was a really great dupe. And then the last one from that video was a dupe for the ABH Brow Freeze, which is $23. I had found at Ulta the e.l.f. Brow Lift, and this is $6. It comes in the same kind of jar. It's this sort of jelly-like stuff that really spikes up your brows and holds them in place all day and gives them kind of like that microbladed effect. I had been using Brow Freeze for a while, and when I saw that e.l.f. had an alternative, I didn't really have high hopes, but then I was pretty impressed by how identical it is, and I have both of them sitting in the drawer in the bathroom with my brow products. And again, I just use them interchangeably. I'll just grab whatever one I happen to grab first. I don't really prefer one over the other because I feel like they're the same thing. Next up, on July 20th, I had another dupes video, and this was more kind of summery themed products. The first one was a dupe for the Chanel bronzer in Soleil Tan Bronze, which is $50, and I found that the ColourPop Soul Body bronzer in the shade Light for $15 is pretty much identical, both in terms of like the jar that it comes in, to the texture of the product. The color is almost the same as well, and these just apply so similarly. They even both have sort of a coconutty scent to them, so I really feel like ColourPop was probably trying to dupe the Chanel bronzer with this, but the Soul Body one actually comes in way more colors to choose from than the Chanel one. So this was definitely one of my favorite finds of the year. And then I also had duped the Natasha Denona Pastel palette with the Garden of Juvia's palette from Juvia's Place. So the Natasha Denona one was $65, the Juvia's Place $25. So it's not drugstore, but you can definitely get Juvia's Place for a lot cheaper. They have sales going on constantly. And I just felt like these looked so similar. They're not identical shade for shade dupes, but I think if you had your eye on the Natasha Denona, you could get such similar looks out of the Juvia's Place one. And Juvia's Place also has an awesome eyeshadow formula, so this was a good one to check out. I also did another palette dupe in this video for the Anastasia Nouveau palette, which is $55, and I found that ColourPop's Lust for Dusk, which is $24, was incredibly similar. And while I've always loved Anastasia's formula in the past, I felt like the Nouveau palette had a particularly large amount of fallout compared to some of her other past palettes like Soft Glam and Modern Renaissance. I just felt like this one was kind of all over the place with the fallout, so I in this case prefer the ColourPop formula. I just feel like it's a little bit easier to work with, not quite as dusty, and I didn't have the shimmer shades falling all over my face when I went to use it. So I thought this one was a great alternative. And then the last dupe that I had in this video was the Givenchy Prism Libre loose powder for $58. And Moira, again, had made pretty much an exact dupe for it with their Set and Correct loose setting powder. This is $14, and the particular shades that are in the Moira one are very similar to the shades in this particular Givenchy one, but both brands have other shade options that you can choose from, but these just happen to be the colors that I had. And I was blown away because I felt like the Moira powder was just as finely milled as the Givenchy. It sits on the skin just as nicely. I think Moira has incredible powders. I've never been a big fan of powder in general because I have really dry skin. I usually try to avoid it, but Moira powders are the first ones that I've tried that I really feel like don't look like powder on your skin. They just completely disappear, but yet they mattify and they smooth out your pores. They're just amazing. If you have dry skin and you've avoided powder for the same reason, I highly recommend checking out the Moira ones. They're so good. Then on July 26th, I did another video called Dupes for Hyped High-End Makeup. So this was kind of like duping new releases, and I had found a dupe for the Givenchy Prism Libre Illuminating Loose Highlighter in the shade Powdery Pink. So that cost $43, and the dupe that I found was kind of obscure, but it was the Coty Airspun Loose Highlighter in the shade Pink Me Up. It was $6 at Walmart, and I feel like a lot of people don't even realize that Coty Airspun made highlighters. Everybody talks about the powder, but the highlighters are definitely more of a slept-on hidden gem. And this highlighter, compared to the Givenchy one, was like almost identical, and they both are a loose formula that comes in a little jar, and just on the skin, I felt like there really wasn't a lot of difference between them at all. So I was super excited to find that dupe as well. Then on September 15th, I wanted to dupe the entire My Dream collection from Natasha Denona. So she had the palette, the cheek palette, and then the lip product. So for the palette, I was so excited to find this dupe, and that is the LA Colors Socialite palette for $8.50 compared to the $69 My Dream palette. Both of them have very warm tone shadows, and when I swatched them out, I was like, okay, these are so similar. The LA Colors one didn't have the duochrome shade that's in the My Dream palette, but everything else I felt like was so similar. And in that video, I actually did a demo where I applied the Natasha Denona to one eye, the LA Colors to the other, and my look came out pretty much exactly the same. I also did show other alternatives to the My Dream palette in that video, so that's a fun one to check out if you are interested in alternatives to the Natasha Denona palette. And then on September 20th, I did another video called These Dupes Are As Good as High End. And I was again duping some newer releases at the time. The first one being the Haus Labs Triclone Foundation that had just come out. It was $45. And I found that my Believe Beauty foundation from Dollar General, that's like $5.50, was pretty much exactly the same. It has such a similar finish and texture. It has medium coverage, just like the Haus Labs one, with a really skin-like satiny finish. And I just didn't see any difference between them. I also did a YouTube short applying one on one side and one on the other. And I got so many comments saying that they felt like the Believe Beauty side actually looked better than the Haus Labs. So that was really cool. And then the second dupe that I had in that video was the for the Gucci blush in the shade Rosy Beige, which is $49. Not cheap for one blush, but I had gotten requests to dupe that color because it's a little bit more of a unique color. And the closest thing that I had found in my collection was from Ulta Beauty, actually from their line. It was their mineral blush in the shade Stargazer, which is $12. And while I didn't feel like these really looked exactly like in the pan, when I actually swatched them, I was like, okay, these do look actually closer than I thought that they would. And when I put them on my skin, I really couldn't tell the difference between them. Once they were blended out, they gave that same effect. Both of them have kind of like a purpley brown undertone. And those Ulta mineral blushes are beautiful. I feel like they're really another slept on product that a lot of people don't talk about. Then on December 17th, which was just last week, I talked about the Thrive Liquid Lash Extensions mascara and the most perfect dupe that I found for it, which is the new Milani Lash Extension Tubing Mascara. So I have an entire video just dedicated to that dupe. They applied exactly the same on my lashes. When I was using the Milani one, I felt like I was using the Thrive. If you had told me that it was the Thrive mascara, I totally would have believed it. And they wear exactly the same way. They remove the same. It is truly an almost exact dupe. I even ended up comparing the ingredient lists because some people in the comments were like, well, the Thrive probably has better ingredients. So I ended up comparing the two side by side. And as it turned out, the first 9 ingredients in the formulas are identical, and then after that, it was really just a combination of like flower waxes. But the first several ingredients of any product is the highest concentration of whatever that ingredient is, and then it goes down from there. So I was pretty surprised to see that Milani had really duped even the ingredients. It wasn't just like a similar experience, it actually is almost the same formula. So anyway, guys, those were my favorite dupes of 2022. And in total, the high-end makeup added up to $1,272 and the dupes added up to $340. So the dupes were an average of about $10 per product and the high-end was an average of about $42 per product. And in total, the dupes would save $931, which is insane. So if you enjoyed this video, I will go ahead and put my dupes playlist right up here. This has all of those videos that I talked about, and in each one, there are many more dupes to check out. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it so much. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed, I hope you'll consider hitting the subscribe button, especially if you enjoy dupe content, and I will see you all in my next video. Take care, guys. Bye.